Together Talk number 1300 8729 11, 12 minutes past 11. Oh, Ron Crew's on the line. Ron's the president of Cairns Port Development Inc. and former councillor Ron Crew. G'day, Ronnie.
Hey, g'day, John.
I know what you're talking about. That's the P&O cruises ship Pacific Eden. It was going to be here, I think, 10 visits everyone expected next year. That's reduced to 7.
Yeah, I sort of can't get over this, John. I find it rather incredible to believe. I thought we'd made good ground in that.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just 9 turnarounds for last year, 11 for this year, and now we don't know how many next year, because 7 turnaround calls to Cairns Port from July to September, and what happens after September? It's becoming a bit of a farce where we're losing out simply because of indecisions from our political representatives and leaders. I heard Elvis before, not all of it, but I heard Elvis and saying that Perth, and it's in the paper, he's written that in the paper as well, but Perth is losing some of its, or a lot of its, turnaround type things.
Sure.
And you know, from my talking to people who fairly regularly go on cruises, John, there are 2 places in the South Pacific that are really favourite, and that's Sydney and Cairns, because of the being able to dock right in town, and Sydney has plenty of things for the passengers to do, as we do here.
Yes.
And I sort of think, well, you know, Townsville. I've spoken with quite a few people down there in the last 24 hours, and I mentioned that this might happen. Where do you reckon they'll go? And they said, well, Castle Hill. We got the aquarium. We got the museum. Maybe the zoo south of Townsville. Maybe a crocodile farm. Maybe Magnetic Island. Well, we have an awful lot to offer.
Yeah.
And Townsville is an industrial city. It's not really a tourist-type city. I know that they'd like to be, and, you know, good luck to them. I'm just disappointed that we're missing out because of them. And that's what it appears like to me. Have you had any news on anything?
Oh, well, I just talked
like
to
that?
Russell earlier on. He's saying don't get too down at the dumps because there's a lot of good news, but basically he's saying he can't share it with me, he'd have to shoot me. So we've got to wait, apparently, and then it becomes a guessing game, so that's frustrating. We talked about the EIS. He said it's all on track to be submitted at the end of June. It'll be completed, and then, of course, it's up, which you and I talked about yesterday off here, up to the Coordinator General to go through that whole process. You know, sometimes these processes are virtually open-ended, so there's the level of frustration. What he's saying is, look, don't be too down also about the duration you're enduring here, because it took 10 years for Townsville to get to this stage, whereas it's only taken the Cairns operation 4 years to get to the same position as far as the EIS is concerned. But that's little consolation for a town that just about had the full dredging project over the line before the intervention of the federal government, basically selling us off as a pawn to UNESCO.
Yeah, well, that's right, John. And Townsville has had the good fortune to have the boundary of the Great Barrier Marine Park adjusted so that they have a dumping ground for the spoil that comes out of the dredge, taken out with the dredges, and they're getting a lot of money spent on that port, John. It's you know, I'll follow up with what Elvis said, and that's $1.6 billion. Now, we mustn't forget that today it was announced or been made available to us the cost of fuel is exceedingly high in Cairns. And one of the reasons for that, it's an extra 3 or 4 cents per litre, because the ships that come in here have to go south of here, unload part of it, and then come back in. If they came straight in here, we'd have that 3 or 4 cents off. Now, I understand that quite a bit of fuel is being road transported from Townsville to Cairns. That is not very, very good and responsible result as a result of the lack of leadership from our political people, mate. That's adding more cost, and I just find this whole thing bloody ridiculous. It's the fuel, it's the sugar, it's the general cargo, the fertiliser, the cruise liners, and the Navy base. Let's not forget them, because they're very, very important to us.
Sure.
I'm pretty annoyed. I have to say that. Oh, you don't know how annoyed I am that this is sort of happening to us. We're at the end of the line as far as the political people are concerned. Well, we'll see what happens in the next election. We've got to start taking steps. There's also a port convention happening in Cairns in June, about the 20th or something like that. Yep. There's a bit of misinformation coming out from their board. It'll be interesting to know who's submitted that information to them. And our association's tried to correct that by writing letters to the chairman of that committee. And we got a pretty terse reply at first, but then when we started pointing out a few facts, he said, you'll have to take and reconsider it all. So at least there's some bit of ground there.
All right, Ronald. Always good to get an update from you. Thank you, and stay in touch. Ronnie Crew is the former councillor. Also, he is currently the president of Cairns Port Development, Inc. It's 11:19. Before you hit the